Hi, I'm Bridget. Welcome to my kitchen where I help busy families eat well with wholesome and delicious recipes. Do you like creating fun family traditions with your kids? Family traditions are a big part of what makes holidays special and memorable. And the Easter Bunny cake that we're going to make today is a good example of that. In my family anyway. When I was growing up, my mom made this Easter Bunny cake every Easter Saturday. And now I make it with my kids. The idea for the bunny cake came from a pattern that my mom found back in the early 1970s. And it's based on a really simple, clever design. One cake serves as the bunny's face, and then the other cake, with two simple slices, becomes the bunny's ears and a bow tie. You then frost the cake, cover the imperfections with coconut, at least that's what I do, and then decorate with goodies. Today I'll show you how to make the cake and the frosting, and then my daughter and one of her friends are going to do the decorating. To begin, I'm going to butter the two 8-inch round cake pans and line them with parchment paper. I just use a little bit of leftover parchment paper to grease the pan. You could also oil the pan, but I prefer butter. If you don't have parchment paper, you can flour the pans after you've greased them, but I prefer parchment paper because it makes it extra easy to take your cakes out of the pan once they've cooked. We'll set these pans aside and get going with the ingredients for our cake. To make the cake, we're going to start by creaming 1 cup of butter, and to that I'm going to add 2 cups of sugar. But before I add the sugar, I'm going to want to make sure the butter is nice and fluffy. I started with butter that was nice and soft to begin with, and now I'm going to add the 2 cups of sugar, but I'm going to add it in 3 additions just to give the butter time to incorporate it. It'll take a few minutes to incorporate that much sugar into 1 cup of butter, but once it comes together well, we are going to add half a cup of hot water. We'll mix that together, and then we're going to add the milk and then the eggs and vanilla. Once the water is completely incorporated, then we can add half a cup of milk. I use 2% milk here, but you can use any kind of milk that you want, whether it's a higher fat, lower fat, or a non-dairy milk. Once we incorporate the milk, it's going to look a little curdled, but don't worry, it'll all come together once we add the eggs and the other ingredients. So we're adding 3 eggs, they're room temperature eggs, and we'll add them 1 at a time, mixing after each addition to make sure they blend in really well. I always use large eggs in my baking. Now that the eggs are incorporated, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. You could add a teaspoon of lemon juice in place of the vanilla if you prefer, or if you have orange flower water in your kitchen, that is lovely in this recipe. Okay, so our wet ingredients are mixed. Now for the dry ingredients. We're going to whisk together 2 cups of all-purpose flour and 1 cup of whole wheat flour. And I'll just whisk them together. I like to add whole grain flour to this cake because it adds extra flavor and nutrition. Now I'm adding 2 teaspoons of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. We'll just whisk these together, and then I'm going to add this flour mixture to the wet mixture, and then we'll get our batter in the pans. I'm going to add the flour mixture to the liquid mixture in 3 additions. Once the batter has come together really well, you can just give it a good stir. Make sure there's no flour at the bottom of the bowl. It's a lovely, thick, almost frothy batter. When we're putting it in the prepared pans, we'll just do our best to divide it evenly between the 2. This recipe is one of my favorite white cakes to make. It's a terrific recipe to use for birthday cakes because it has such a beautiful crumb, and it makes a nice layer cake if you wanted to use it as a birthday cake. So I'm just going to spread the batter in the pan almost to the edges. I preheated the oven to 350 degrees, and these cakes are going to take about 45 minutes to cook. I'm going to check them at 40 minutes just to be sure. I'm going to put these cakes right in the center of the oven. And I'll set the timer for 40 minutes. But like I said, I expect them to take 45 minutes. Now for the frosting. My mom always made boiled icing for the Easter Bunny cake, but I use a simple white icing. And you'll need a good 4 cups of icing to completely frost this cake. Plus you'll need a little extra for the ears and the bow tie, because when we make the slices to make those shapes, it'll expose the crumb of the cake so that your first layer of frosting or your first coat of frosting will be a little bit messy. So we're going to do a double batch of this recipe. We're going to start with half a cup of butter, and this is very soft butter. And I'm just going to start by creaming it a bit, and then I'm going to add a bit of milk, or I'll start adding the milk. I'll add vanilla, and then I'll continue on with the icing sugar. Because we're making a double batch, we'll use about 6 cups of icing sugar, but we might end up using a little bit more. And we'll use between 4 tablespoons and 6 tablespoons of milk. Really, when you're making an icing like this, it's all about the feel of it. So once we have the foundation of the butter that we want and the vanilla that we want, then we can just play with the amount of icing sugar and milk to get the consistency that we want that makes it easy to spread but not too runny. I'm going to start with 2 teaspoons of vanilla. splash of milk. And I will start with the first 2 cups of icing sugar. And now I'm going to continue adding the icing sugar until I've added about 6 cups. So this is the 3rd cup. I've got 5 cups of icing sugar in here now, so I'm going to add a splash more of milk. And then I'm going to add a couple more cups of icing sugar. I'm just going to test this with a knife to see if it's the right consistency to spread. And it is. So it's a little bit frothy, it'll spread easily, and it's nice and smooth. So now we're ready to frost the cake, but before we do, I'm going to show you how to cut the second cake to make the ears and the bow tie. And our cakes are ready. I can tell they're cooked because the cake is starting to pull away from the sides of the pan, and the tops spring back lightly when touched. You could also use a cake tester just to make sure, but these are ready. This is the design that we're going to use to make our ears and our bow tie. So as you can see, we just have 2 slices to make on one of our cakes. It is easier if you make a bit of a template, although you can do it freehand, which I really did for years. All right. So just following my dotted line. There we go. So we have 2 ears, the 2 ears, and a bow tie. So we'll put the face, 1 cake right in the middle. You'll need a big, either a cookie sheet or a big cutting board, or if you have a really big serving plate, because this bunny, when you put it all together, does take up a lot of space. There we go. Now I'll put the first coat of icing on. I've never been super tidy when it comes to frosting a cake, but the benefit of this cake is that after we frost it, I'm going to coat it with coconut, and that will hide the imperfections. I'm starting with the cut edges first, just because they're a little messier to frost. This is really the crumb coat that I'm putting on, in most places anyway, so I'm going to let it sit for a minute once I've got everything covered, and then I'll come back to it and put 1 more coat on, using up the last of the frosting. And then I'm going to cover it up with some sweetened flaked coconut just to tidy it a bit before the girls come and do the final decorating. I'm just going to sprinkle over some sweetened coconut and pat it in a little bit, just because I'm always very messy with the icing, and this hides all of my mistakes. Or it hides some of my mistakes anyway. Now it's time for Amelia and Emma to put the final touches on our Easter Bunny cake. So now we're ready to decorate the cake. This is my daughter Amelia, and this is her friend Emma. Amelia has decorated lots of Easter Bunny cakes. This is the first time for Emma. So I'll let you girls just go to it. We've got stuff for the bunny eyes, for the bunny's whiskers, for the bunny's teeth, maybe polka dots for the bow tie, but I'll let you girls decide.
I feel like a red one for the nose.
Yeah, because if it had red eyes, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to place the eyes so then I know where to put the
Here, I'll
nose?
cut that.
Oh, I see. You're doing like his mouth. Nice. Oh, he has a handlebar mustache.
Look at that!
I love it.
They have a motorcycle. Okay, so what ones are you going to use?
So our Easter Bunny cake is ready. This is enough cake to feed an army. So if you're having an Easter celebration, consider this a dessert that can feed everyone. I hope that this cake gives you an idea for new traditions that you can start with your family at Easter. Thanks for watching.